So I set up the record and we'll consider this the start. So welcome everybody. Great to see y'all beautiful Black faces up in the house tonight. We're gonna go ahead and start this conversation tonight as an introduction of our study group. And we just gonna have a conversation about what we're doing, why we're doing it, and what we hope to accomplish with it, okay? Of course, this is the Nguzo Saba 365 study group project of the Inland Area Kwanzaa group that has been in existence since 1988, started by Amina Carter and Ratibu J. Cox. And we are the members of the Inland Area Kwanzaa group. And we decided that we needed to do something to celebrate and advance the Nguzo Saba, the 7 principles, more so than during the week of Kwanzaa at the end of the year. The values are significant, and we believe the blueprint for all that we want to do to develop and uplift the Black community and everything. So whereas we would wait until we were planning our Kwanzaa events to start actively engaging the Nguzo Saba each year, we decided we didn't want to do that anymore. We want to celebrate and work to advance the Nguzo Saba, the 7 principles, every day of the year. We want to introduce them more so to the mainstream. You know, we understand that Kwanzaa and Nguzo Saba came out of the Black freedom movement. It has a revolutionary foundation, but it certainly is time to advance the teachings to the masses even more so, right? So that's what we hope to do here. This is an introduction of our group, and we have several of our members here in attendance. I don't see everybody here yet, but this meeting isn't just for members, right? This meeting is for everybody who has an appreciation for us as a people, for our history, and certainly anybody who can appreciate why we should be talking about and advancing the 7 principles every single day of the year, right? Unity, self-determination, collective work and responsibility, cooperative economics, creativity, purpose, faith. Those are values, applied values that when applied, become the foundation of great things. And I think we already understand that. So to some degree, I'm preaching to the choir, but that was what inspired us to come together today. And tonight, we're just going to talk, have a free-flowing discussion about why we're doing what we're doing, what we hope to accomplish. And I'm not going to be the only voice. Matter of fact, I'm not always going to do the introductions for these, I don't think. You know, we can pass that around. But for my purposes, I've been an advocate, a student of the Nguzo Saba for going on 20 years now. I was first exposed to Kwanzaa in the early 90s, I believe, was the first time I celebrated Kwanzaa. And after moving to California and having the opportunity to meet Dr. Karenga personally, and then the opportunity to study with him and everything, you know, I began to understand, I should say, the deeper foundation to Kwanzaa and the Nguzo Saba. And I've been a student of those teachings for almost 20 years, as I mentioned. And we're going to use Dr. Karenga's teachings here, but anybody who understands Dr. Karanga and his teachings knows that it's not just about his teachings. His philosophy, Kawaida, by definition, is about the best of African history and culture. And in his work, he draws from all of the scholars, right? All of the worthy scholars, to be sure. The women and men who have studied our history and who seek to teach and understand the importance of doing that. He quotes all of them. So we're going to, you know, study his work, and we're going to also study the works of all of our great teachers. And we're going to study some of our own works. Let me pause this for a second. My video goes haywire for whatever reason. In any case, because I came to have such a deep appreciation for the values, and I should add this, through my studies, and this is key here, I guess I came to believe that I figured out what keeps all Black people from getting along, right? And to me, it occurred to me that the fact that Black people don't share the same values is what keeps Black people from getting along, right? It's what keeps all people from getting along. This isn't exclusive to Black people. Our history and our heritage is a profound and significant point of reference for us. But everybody here knows that once we find out about each other's values, or more specifically about each other's character, right? That history and culture, skin color, all of that stuff fades in terms of its significance. And we deal with people based on who they present themselves to be. And certainly any notion of unity, you know, we draw from our shared history and heritage as our point of reference. It's what brings us to the table. But the only way we can work together constructively and achieve the goals that we seek to achieve is if we share those same goals with the people that we're working with, and we share the necessary values in order for us to do that work together, right? So to me, when it occurred to me that our need to share, to operate based on shared values was critical to our efforts going forward, that's when I locked in on the significance of the Nguzo Saba, right? And when it's also the point, of course, to go along with that, to coincide with that, when it began to occur to me that if more and more Black people could ground ourselves in those values, those principles, and seek to apply them more extensively, then not only would our lives and our communities change, but the whole world would change. And why is that? Well, it's obvious. The values speak for themselves in terms of what they're able to constitute and bring together. But more significantly than that, and I say more significantly than that for this reason, I'm gonna pass the mic in just a second, because the world follows us when we're at our best. We have countless and continuous records of that. So the more we pull ourselves together and align ourselves on these shared principles, these shared values, and begin doing the work that calls on us to do and achieving the results, well then, you know, the world will follow. And that's what we should be seeking to do. We should be seeking to lead the world as opposed to, you know, looking for opportunities to follow, right? We've been waiting on the world to get its act together for decades and centuries, and it hasn't done that yet. So we need to stop waiting and lead the way ourselves. So with that, that's what inspires me in this effort. And I'm anxious and excited to hear about what inspires our other members. And if we have some guests, I would certainly like to hear from them too. So whoever shall, please. You are muted, Dr. J.
Okay, all right. It is very fitting that this is Black History Month. And this is a time for great discussion because we have been through a lot and things have changed and they're continuing to change, and we have to figure out where we are, what we're going to do. And to piggyback off of what you said, brother, about us leading the way and instead of following. I think we've been following the same old playbook for so many years. And Nguzo Saba really provides us with a framework, you know, that we can use 365 days a year. We, living in America, we tend to gravitate towards certain holidays to celebrate certain things that really have nothing to do with us. But when it comes to us celebrating ourselves, February, the shortest month of the year, it's not enough. There's so much more that we need to learn about what we've done. I personally am tired of hearing about the same people every single year. It's old, it's tired, and no disrespect to the ancestors, but there's so many more people that have done so many other things. And at a time when they're saying, you know, we don't want Black history taught in the schools. Well, another way to look at this is the schools really shouldn't be the ones teaching it. We should be teaching it. But in order for us to teach it, we have to know our story, not his story. We've been taught his story every year. What's our story? And how do we apply, if you really think about Nguzo Saba, before it was given a name, these were principles that our ancestors lived by. This is how they made it through.
Yeah.
So it's not about what you believe. And that's the one thing that I would have to say to anybody that's listening. It doesn't matter if you're Christian, if you're Hebrew Israelite, Nation of Islam, Catholic, Bohemian, if you worship a head of lettuce, whatever you do, that's not what matters. What matters is we all have this one uniting principle as a people. I teach cultural theories. Every culture has a set of principles that they live by. And they know what they know because their elders teach them. We have to continue to do the same, and not the same old people, because our youth think, no disrespect, Rosa Parks, Dr. King, Frederick Douglass, Harriet Tubman, it's the same people. There are so many more and so many other ways to deal with this and live and be fruitful and to build. And at this point in the game, we must build.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. I appreciate that. Let me see. We had, I'm going to ask you all, if you would, to turn on your mics. I'm not to turn on your mics, to turn on your video so that we can see your faces on here. And if you're not able to tonight, then for future sessions, please remember that the request is for you to have your video on while we're having these sessions. Akir, I see you just pulled in. We're on here talking about why we're doing what we're doing and what we hope to accomplish from it. Dr. J just said some things that inspired me to almost interrupt a couple of times, and I decided to hold my tongue, so that we can give everybody the opportunity to share their thoughts on it. But to speak to the younger generation, why don't we have Akir go next and talk to us about why you're here, what you hope to accomplish, and why you think this is important, what we're trying to do here.
Yes, thank you. I think that the major reason that I'm here is because it's giving me an opportunity to talk to people who are older than me and wiser than me. And the reason I say that is because I have a general understanding of the world from my perspective, but that's really small because all I know is social media. I've been on social media since I was 9 years old, and most of my life has been through the computer. So I don't have the understanding that older people have growing up in a community where they're taught things from their communities. I remember in the past, Dr. J talked about growing up in a predominantly Black neighborhood. That was never my experience. So talking to older people, and I know that Suja is from Detroit. So you have experiences in your own life that I can't even conceptualize. And I'm hoping that being in this group will allow me to share new ideas and get the benefit of talking to older people, because you guys have the wisdom that I don't, and I have I would say ideas and understanding how to reach the youth in the way that older people don't. And there's a huge disconnect between the generations. It's an extremely huge disconnect in that everyone around my age group is taught to not want to listen to anyone older than us at all. It's like it's the norm to think that we get or understand everything. And I'm smart enough to know that that's not the case. However, I realize that a lot of my peers don't. And it's really unfortunate because it's like seeing an entire generation of lost people. And it's more than just a generation, though, because these people are having kids themselves, which is very scary to me. So what I'm hoping by being a part of this group is getting a better knowledge of my history, hearing firsthand accounts from people that are older than me and more experienced to get direction for myself and to build a deeper connection with my community.
Yeah,
that actually is a good segue to why I'm here, to support our community and help it to grow and to help the younger generation coming up. Because like Akir said, the mindset that they're in, so the kids under him, like his kids, our kids, we don't want them to stray away. And so to keep that from happening, we need to build our value system in our own community so that the kids are learning from us about them and not from social media, because they can get a whole different thing from that.
Yes. Well, and that's almost that's a segue into one of my reasons that I didn't speak to, I guess, that I want to just throw in here because you inspired it. You reminded me of it, Sarah. I think in addition to, the conversation about us having different values, I don't think we operate with a common or an adequately elevated conception of what it means to be Black. I think too many of us, too many Black people buy into what this society tells us about us. And we see that in their behavior, right? The motto for my old study group was, what you'll do for yourself depends on what you think about yourself. And what you think about yourself depends on what you know about yourself. And what you know about yourself begins with what you call yourself. So who are you and what does that mean? And through that, as I said in our panel, I spent a heck of a lot of time asking Black people, what does it mean to be Black? And the answers were interesting. I mean, the answers were so interesting that I wrote papers about those conversations. What I found is that if you ask 10 or 100 Black people, what does Blackness mean to them? You could get between 10 or 100 up to 100 different answers, and most of the answers center around, stereotypical notions of who we are, our swag, our physical prowess, athletic skills, that kind of thing. Some people will ground, their self-conception in Africa and those things. You will get some of that. But even amongst those people, you rarely, if ever, get somebody who understands Blackness in terms of significant achievements, significant contributions to, the forward flow of history and those types of things. So often, as I mentioned, our perceptions are tied to, stereotypes or to our experience as an oppressed people. You get a lot of that, people defining Blackness exclusively in terms of our struggle. Our struggle is certainly a part of who we are, but it's not the biggest part of who we are. I think our achievements and contributions to the world it represents the biggest part of who we are. So, another thing that I want to accomplish through this effort here is making a meaningful contribution to helping to elevate, common conception of what Blackness means. And that's what, we constructed this schedule purposely, looking to identify conversations and topics that give us an opportunity to have an elevated conversation about what it means to be Black by example, by showing what we have done and what we're doing today. Because, as Marcus Garvey teaches us, as he said, people have done what people can do, right? So we see models of what our possibilities are in our examinations and celebrations of what we've done and examinations of our history. So with that, Mbaji, tell us why you're here.
Habarigani, everyone. I hope everyone is doing well. I am here because I believe in the 360 all year round, practicing the Nguzo Saba. It's something that I thought about many years ago before the pandemic, and it's something that we did have every once in a while just to bring people out into the community. And as a group, we were all assigned one principal. This month it was my turn. Next month it was somebody else's turn, and we drew a big crowd of maybe 12 to 15, sometimes 20 people. And I believe Sarah was there a couple times for that, at least one in her family. And then that led us to the Kwanzaa Karamu at the end of the year. And just by having those gatherings like we are planning on doing now all year round, brought more awareness to why we celebrate Kwanzaa and why we get together as Black people and why we celebrate something that was created for us by us. So I am here today as a Kwanzaa member and as practicing Kwanzaa since about 1993 to participate and the study groups. And if I can bring in more people, I would be really happy, and I'll attempt to do that. And one of my experiences this last week, I'm a substitute teacher. I'm retired from the state of California, but I chose to be a teacher, substitute teacher, because I wanted to work in special ed and I wanted to work with alternative education because that's where a lot of our Black youth are. Whether they don't have families, they don't have mothers and fathers, they don't have Black teachers, they don't have Black counselors or nurses. And I just felt, since I got the feeling that most teachers don't want to work with special ed kids, and they surely don't want to work in juvenile hall like I have started off doing and still do, I felt that my presence made a difference to the youth that was in there. Now, some of them may have had 20 years to life, and some of them may just be in there for a moment. But just to be there to encourage them and let them know that there is something out there for them, and don't believe what they learn from mostly Caucasian people and teachers telling them they can't do this and they can't do that. And that's my goal as I continue to substitute teach. Not a lot, maybe like 5 or 6 times a month. It's not a lot, but I can still touch the minds of a Black student, because when I teach in other schools, alternative education, sometimes they don't even have any Black teachers. And I'm there. For instance, last week I taught at the military academy because I'm a military person, I'm a veteran. And I was the second teacher for a class specifically there for special ed students. And the teacher did a slideshow of the roaring 80s and didn't include one Black person. And I kept looking and looking, and on all the slides, it was all these white people. And I just thought to myself, like, that's why I'm here. Because when he gets a break or he steps out, then I'll bring up some other individuals that were important or creative or inventors during that time. And I had an opportunity to do that. Even though I just talked about jazz and musicians and a couple of inventors, I still had the opportunity to do that. But that is what I saw with my own eyes, of them taking our history out and excluding us, because he could have put in a slide of an inventor, a Black inventor, African-American inventor, or something in the roaring 20s, but he did not. He chose not to do that.
Well, like we're talking.
I like being involved.
So like we're talking about here, we got to take responsibility for teaching our own.
Yes.
And you touched on several things that we could have some very fruitful discussions about here, in the context of this setting here. So thank you for that, Mbaji. We see Chachi signed on. Welcome, brother. We just going through our conversation here, which is, just giving us an opportunity to talk a little bit about why we're here and what we hope to accomplish. And that's all we've been doing so far tonight. We're going to continue this for a little while longer. And then I guess we can talk a bit. Our plan was to do the public session from 6 to 7, and then from 7 to 7:30, talk about our next session. So if I could, can we get Dr. Quayle and Sister Kathy, Sister Atade? Did I say that correctly?
Atadi. Share with us what inspires you in your participation here, and what you hope to contribute to, what you hope we will accomplish here.
Well, Bargani, everyone. I am Kathy Atadi Quayle. I'm here because I'm hoping that this will be an opportunity for folks to understand the simplicity of being able to speak to, do, and be a part of Nguzo Saba 365 days out the year. I think it's a day late and a dollar short for us to still be stuck in the idea that Black History Month is just a month. We're Black until we're no longer above the ground. So we need to be in a place of celebrating who we are. And I agree with what folks have said. We're just not a handful of folks that have given our a meaning to who we are as African American Black people. We need to be celebrating who we are, what we've accomplished, and do things different. And I think if we have the opportunity to broadcast this beyond a handful of people, or some folks get an opportunity to at least get a little nibbit of it, the simplicity of Nguzo Saba will go a long way. So I'm the elder, but I'm here to also give, teach, and maybe even learn some more for myself.
Absolutely, absolutely, absolutely. Asante Sana for that. Brother Dr. Quayle, give us some, bro.
Okay, yeah, I'm glad to be here. This afternoon, this morning actually, I watched a summation of the Davos conference. Davos is an international conference. The World Economic Forum, they do a thing each year. They had their conference about a week and a half ago, and I got a chance to watch that. They did a summation today, and what was the most important points, and all of the speakers brought up at least one thing, and that thing was AI, artificial intelligence, and the way that artificial intelligence is going to impact everything from education. What we have, this new thing, what is it, GBT or whatever it is, that you can tell it, give me a solution to the problems of Black people, and it'll give you a 15-page treatise on that, completely made up. And so if that is such an important thing, then I need to be here because of what I was looking at on Akir's screen. Here is this young Black man. He's young to me. He probably feels like a father in his own skin, but I'm watching him with that little boy that he's teaching and raising and preparing that little boy to become the change agent of the future. And when I look at this technology, and AI is supposed to dominate our future, it inspires me to be around young men like Akir, who are prepared to not only provide some leadership, but also to be a teacher to the generation that's coming up. That's why I'm here.
Yeah, well, that's a beautiful little girl who he has there
Oh,
with him, and that's neither here nor there. You didn't know that, but I wanted to make that correction because at least for me in my life, when I found out I had a girl on the way, it made a little bit more. It was different than when I found out I had a son on the way. So I would trust that everything, at least from my perspective, everything that you said is multiplied by some factor, by the fact that he had that little girl there with him, as opposed to, being a little boy. And that's not to diminish, of course, the significance of a little boy at all. It's just to say that there's something special about them girls, right?
well, I certainly understand the special power of that Black girl magic. So
Yes, indeed.
yeah.
Brother Bill, see you here with us tonight. Glad to have you with us. You are the most recent to join us, at least this collective. Our
experience contact with one another goes back a few years. So why don't you, take the mic? And Chachi, I'm coming to you next.
I'm just thrilled to see someone trying to make some forward progress, to put some concrete action behind the Nguzo Saba, and more than just ritual, but something forward facing, something facing our future, to institute some processes, create infrastructure or whatever to actually forward the principles in the future, to make the future different because of those principles.
Yes, yes, yes. Well, I know when I was with the organization, I had a lot of ideas about how we could do exactly what you just said. And I got to a point of frustration because I wanted to do things a certain way. I thought it was important to do things a certain way. I thought it was necessary to engage at a different level, with these wonderful teachings. I did get to the point though where I resolved all of my concerns this way. It occurred to me that whatever frustration I was feeling was related to the work that I needed to do, right? As opposed to being frustrated that what I wanted to see accomplished couldn't be accomplished through the organization, us, and all of that. I was like, well, Dr. Karanga has, certainly done his share of the work, as have others, so now it's time for me, instead of being frustrated, it's time for me to see this as an opportunity to begin doing things the way that I think it should be done, So what was so magical for me is that over the course of this Kwanzaa season, this whole group came together, and people who hadn't been active for a while, or people who hadn't participated in this effort at all, just really migrated to it and really, locked into it and really saw the potential in it. So, I believe there's unlimited potential in what we've started here, and what it develops into will have everything to do with how we execute, and what we decide we want to do, with it, and what we commit to. So I'm excited about it. I'm glad to have all of you here participating in it, in this collective effort, in this effort to apply the principles in the most meaningful way. Brother Chachi, why don't you give us some thoughts on why you're here with us and what you hope to accomplish, and whatever else you're inspired to share with us.
Oh man, perfect timing. I'm kind of running around, but I basically don't want to beat a dead horse and repeat most of what everyone has been saying with respect to just being a part of a collective that is inspired or driven to perpetuate the principles of Nguzo Saba just beyond the celebration, but also to your point with respect to seeing an opportunity and acknowledging what has been done before us and what is possible in the future. I definitely wanted to take that charge, or at least be a part of taking that charge. So I'm inspired just in being able to take what I feel like might be history for not only for this community, but for this an overall outlook on Kwanzaa. I think we say it all the time that we need to. I think every ceremony we say that we should be exercising Kwanzaa 365 days a year. So it's great to be a part of a practice that is driven to do that. I also wanted to just kind of touch on something that one of the brothers just mentioned about AI and the technology that is potentially before us. And I think it's imperative that we do maintain these types of circles and forums that we can communicate with each other, because make no mistake about it, these entities or these new tools are going to either be the detriment or the benefit of mankind. Just depends on your perspective and how you intend to use it, because it will certainly use you if you let it.
Yeah. Well, I know we don't have a broad discussion about technology here in a couple of weeks. I'm at the end of the month, I got this conversation on technology. I'm centering around 3D printing, but it's going to be a broad conversation about technology, you know, and how we need to reconnect with a vocation of with technology as a vocation, you know, where we understand ourselves as, you know, innovators of technology and not just victims of it or consumers of it.
Yes. Yes.
I mean, black people laid the foundations of technology. We know that amongst our group here. You know, we just got to get back to an applied understanding of that, where we are leading the way, innovating, you know, and engaging it at every conceivable level, you know. The only way to keep this emerging technology from being to our detriment is to be actively engaged in all of its applications. You know,
yes.
If we sit around and wait on other people and trust the other people to do the right thing, well, we don't get what we've gotten up to this point, right? We got to be in there leading the way, you know, developing the technology. We got it in us, you know, so we just got to be inspired, you know, to do that and moving forward with it with a purpose and with like-minded people, you know. That's what's needed. We need to be teamed up with like-minded people. It's less about our shared skin color as it is about our shared goals and values and, you know, commitment to do the work going forward. So
and encourage our youth to enter in technical fields of study like engineering and robotics and science, being scientists, because I talk to a lot of students, and one of the questions I love to ask is, what are your inspirations? What do you want to be when you grow up? What are you going to study? And a lot of them don't know. Are they say psychology or just something that's not up to par with the way our world is operating today? So then I introduce forensic science and forensics to them, security, and what about being a doctor, and some more technical things like robotics, because they all love computers and things like that. So maybe they can create and design. And I think that's very important when we're around young people and my own nieces and nephews too, to encourage them and motivate them to keep up with the time that we are in now.
And it's critically important, if I might add this, to inspire the girls towards technology. You know, that is critically important. I mean, I've been in engineering for 30-something years, right? And I could almost count on two hands, not one hand. I could count on two hands the number of women who I've worked with directly in the field, talking about as engineers, not support staff in some way, or accounting or marketing or anything. I'm talking about in a technical role. And I'll say this: whenever they're there, their presence is so tremendously appreciated. So I mean, there's no limit. And Bill can talk to this too. Bill is an engineer, you know. I don't know if his experience has been the same as mine, but I certainly haven't encountered anywhere near enough women in the course of my work life. You know, it would be a welcome addition to have more women, sisters in particular.
No,
I know, Kenza. That's exactly what I'm saying.
Hi, Kenza.
Hi.
Yeah. So we need more. We need more girls. We need more girls and women in these technical disciplines.
All over.
About women and the need for women in technology.
Yeah.
When I was taking my computer science classes, of the 3 or 4 classes that I took, there's only 1 or 2 women in each of the classes. And biggest problem is when I ask girls why they're not interested in pursuing computer science and programming, is they say that it would be an uncomfortable situation. They feel like they would be unwelcomed and that the men in the class would be creepy. And that is absolutely the truth. It is not a comfortable environment at all. Now, me, I'm used to being around women. I have 5 sisters. A lot of the guys in the class make it a very strange and uncomfortable situation for them. So I definitely understand why women wouldn't be as interested in pursuing those careers. Of course, the money's great and they can create wonderful things, but it's not an environment where they would feel comfortable. So I think that it's definitely important to create new environments in which women can feel comfortable and to pursue these things.
Yeah, and whatever type of support they can be given or encouragement, you know, to go along with that is critical and key as well. Let's talk about what's all on our schedule. We had 6:40 now, so we got another officially like 19 minutes or so in this session. Let's talk about what we have coming up, and whatever comes along with that. I know next week we got our first official program kicking off with Akir. He's going to give us his presentation on Black child prodigies. Can you talk a little bit about that, Akir? Tell us what we're in store for.
Yes. So my talk for next week, I'll be giving a slideshow presentation as well as showing my face, and it will be talking about my over the last 2 years how I've been studying child prodigies, and I'll be using Kinza as my case study because before she was born, I read this book called "Raise Your Child to Be a Genius" by Laszlo Polgar. And if you don't know who that is, he's the best female chess player of all time, Judith Polgar, and she has 2 other sisters. And her dad had the idea that I can raise any child to be a genius, and he found a wife who was crazy enough to agree with him. So they did that. When their children turned 4, they started training them in chess, and then they reached incredible levels of success. The youngest daughter, Judith Polgar, is still by far rated the #1 chess champion of all time, female chess champion of all time. And that inspired me to get really deep into trying to understand how human brains work, and understanding how what creates prodigies. Is a prodigy just something that's completely natural? Is it genetics, or is it something that can be trained? And Laszlo Polgar believed that it's something that can be trained. And that really inspired me, because I thought, well, if this is something that we can do, like if we can raise our children to have higher IQs, that enables us to have more potential for what they can achieve later in life. So we're having these conversations about AI and technology. The higher your IQ is, the higher your potential is to be able to conceptualize these things, and not only understand what it is now, but to innovate as well. So because of that, that has gotten me into this whole idea. I follow all the young Black child prodigies, whether it be music, science, mathematics. There's a 2-year-old boy who can do complex. I would say further than complex arithmetic, he can do like algebra 1 homework. He's 2.5 years old, and it's incredible seeing how these young Black kids are doing it. So I know if everyone else can, we can do it too. That's pretty much what it talks about, and showing people how they can maybe join in on it as well.
Yeah, well, I'm gonna be able to. I'm gonna talk to you before then, because I got some references about children out of some of Dr. Karanga's teachings, and also I want to share some teachings about the perfectibility of the human person. The ancient Kemet too talked about how the human person could be perfected through the accumulation of knowledge. So directly along the lines of what you just said, that is almost scary. So I'll pull that out, and we'll use some of that to get the conversation started. But I thought that was an excellent way to start, because when it comes to inspiring hope in our people, you can't get no better inspiration than what we're able to see coming out of our children, as far as I'm concerned. And child prodigies, if you can't be inspired to see greatness in yourself and unlimited possibility by seeing greatness and unlimited capability in these children, then I don't know what we can do for you. So I'm looking forward to that presentation, brother. I really am. Chachi and I had some conversation about the presentation he's put together on Black economics. So why don't you talk a little bit about that, Chachi, if you can?
Yes, brother, and sorry, don't mean to blindside you with the switch up, but I kind of gave it a little bit more thought, and I realized that in my lack of expertise, I definitely had the intention of coming as a layperson with respect to some of the things that I've discovered or come across. But I thought that it might be more imperative if we just honed in more on the resources, because it's not necessarily on what you're being told, but what you intend to study and practice, and finding those opportunities to where you can gain the information, or at least start your journey on what you want to do with your finances. Even when we had our conversation with respect to credit, you had kind of touched on the fact that, you know, that wasn't necessarily something that you were wholly focused on, and or, you know, thought that, you know, there was an absolute benefit in that. And actually to your point, you have some strong validity with respect to that. And so I just realized that, you know, a lot of us, our journey is different, and we have different expectations, different intentions, and different outcomes. But all under the principles of Nguzo Saba and the umbrella of practice, we have to, you know, have our minds in tune with what it is our goals are for our finances and for our businesses, and how we intend to play our roles individually, so that we can be beneficial, you know, cogs in the wheel, or in the old machine, if you will, of keeping our communities, businesses, and economics intact. Like, I love the fact that the brother mentioned that there was a collective that they meet every year about that. I really wanted to tap in a little bit more into that, but ultimately, I'm just going to try to bring in a few resources that I found that are touching on, you know, the growth and development of businesses, touching on, you know, how to, you know, change around some practices and maybe habits with respect to finances, as well as investments. And I'm trying not to go too, that's the other thing too, is so much I couldn't cover it on my own. And even if I did, I probably wouldn't do it the accurate justice where people would benefit. So I think it definitely is going to be a great opportunity for us to really kind of I might even touch on some things that everybody already knows about, but just being able to have a dialogue or just open the floor for people to be tapped in is what I hope to be, you know, touching on when my time comes.
Excellent, excellent. Well, we'll talk some more between now and then, and go into it, because I always want to be able to connect some of the teachings, either from Dr. Karango or from one of our other scholars, leading into the discussion. So I want to talk with you a little bit more so I can nail down exactly what reference to draw from, to lead into that. And then the presentation after that one on the 28th is mine. And I mentioned that I'm actually looking to have, I'm actually going to make some general points about technology and our need to reconnect with technology in the most meaningful way, our need to reconnect with an understanding of ourselves as technical innovators, you know, not just as consumers of technology or victims of technology, but as technological innovators, and the need for us to redevelop an understanding of that and to engage all of the technology, you know. I'm going to use 3D printing as a case study, right? Because to most people, 3D printing is new technology. But guess what? I did my first 3D printing in the early 90s, you know, back in the days when I was working for NASA. We, you know, I mean, of course, NASA had access to that, you know, technology 20 years ago. I bought my first 3D printer, I think now about 7 years ago. It may have been longer than that. And I'm gonna talk about how every Black home should have a 3D printer. And what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna show examples of how I've used the 3D printer around the house, right? Not just for making toys for the children, but for repairing things and for making things that, you know, made our life simpler. My daughter was leaning back in her desk chair, and it fell over, and it caused one of the attachment pieces on the back that attached the back to the frame broke. Well, I got a 3D printer, so I spent about a half an hour, you know, working up a model of a replacement, using that broken piece as a model. Set up the 3D printer, let it run for a few hours, and by the end of the night, I had a replacement part for that chair. I put that chair back together, you know. I was in the kitchen one day noticing how the brooms and the mop were just all having a party all over in the corner. Just, you know, it looked like they was having a good old time just over there, just clowning, right? So it occurred to me, in order to bring a little bit more order to the situation, I needed to find some hooks or some clamps of some sort.
So what I'm going to talk about, one of the things I'm going to talk about is where you go to get 3D models for printing if you don't have years of design experience to be able to design your own thing. So what I did, I went to one of the sites where you can download free 3D models, and I did a search for what I called a broom clamp. I found several models free to be downloaded of clamps, various types of clamps that you could use to situate, you could use for organizing your closet space and all of that stuff. And I downloaded one, set it up on the printer. It took about an hour, maybe an hour and a half to print. Next thing you know, I got, clamps, and all of my brooms and my mops are all neatly organized. I'll show all of that stuff, I didn't come prepared to show it all today. And then of course, some of you all know that at the start of the pandemic, when everything shut down, folks getting laid off all over the place, contracts getting canceled and everything, I started manufacturing face masks. And I was manufacturing face masks here at home, in my garage. I had a factory out there with several 3D printers. So I'll show all of that and talk about, how you can design, make toys, for your children. You can, modeling is not that difficult. So even if you can't find free models, it's not difficult to get a hold of a free program and be able to create models that you want to create. And then too, it's a emerging technology, and there's work to be had in the industry, and there are businesses to be started, around this type of manufacturing and stuff. So I'm gonna be talking about all of that in that and giving examples. And since we're the Inland Area Kwanzaa Group, I'm gonna talk also about the Kwanzaa products that I manufactured for a while, and we'll go back to manufacturing again using 3D printing. So that's coming up. And then after that, we going into March, which is Women's History Month. And for us, Black Women's History Month. And we got a outstanding lineup for that. We're gonna start it off with Sister Kathy and Dr. J doing a presentation, Myths and Methods of the Black Superwoman. Why don't can y'all talk a little bit about that? I know we're well ahead of that, and you probably haven't pulled the details of that together. But nevertheless, if we could talk a little bit about the intent, the need to have that conversation, you don't have to so much focus on what you're going to cover, but just the need to have that conversation, I think.
Well, Dr. J and I have not actually had an opportunity to pull our thoughts together. However, I think just a little tidbit of what was said tonight about women and technology and this whole idea of isolation in the room on not feeling comfortable. I'm hoping with our collaboration on talking about women and the myth of the superwoman that we have an opportunity to encourage Black women, African American women, to not lose their voice in a man-dominated arena. I work in the healthcare industry, and today it's mostly run by a lot of white men with bad ideas.
Say it again. Say it again.
And it has been my duty to not feel inhibited, prohibited, or even discouraged to say what I have to say, as long as it's intelligent, as my husband has taught us all, as long as it's intelligent, not to be afraid to speak up. So I'm hoping this opportunity, once Dr. Sims and I have a chance to speak and dialogue, that there will be some positive reinforcement, encouragement to elevate women to feel that their voices need to be heard. Period, end of story. That's it, that's all.
Excellent, excellent, excellent. Dr. J?
Yes, I have a very tight schedule, as does the sister here. So we were supposed to meet yesterday and time got away from me. But Yes, definitely about the healthcare system. We are 3 times more likely to die in childbirth or have stillborn children than any other group. I would have to talk about Black maternal health. And I'd also have to talk about not just being superwoman in male dominated spaces, but we need to stop trying to be superwomen in our own spaces. We can be very competitive, and that causes stress on us as well. And we talk about male versus female. We have to understand that the white female has a totally different experience than us. So it's not a woman thing. It's a Black woman thing. And we bear the weight of all that. And how do we handle that?
Excellent, excellent, excellent. I'm looking forward to that presentation. Mbaji, you up next. Black women leadership making their voices heard. Tell us about what you got in store for that.
And it sounds like everything that they're talking about. So I'll just capitalize on that. Black women leadership making their voices heard. Sharing their ideas in a friendly, supportive environment is conducive for their self-growth, but sometimes they are not allowed to. And they are not allowed to participate. So I chose Kuti Chakawia's self-determination to define ourselves, name ourselves, create for ourselves, and speak for ourselves. And I break that down and do a few different categories to define yourself. For instance, giving examples of what I do to define myself, and something that women in the work environment must do to share their vision, their creativeness, because sometimes when they speak up, they're overlooked. Like once upon a time in one of my jobs, when I had ideas, everybody else had ideas, but for some reason, even if we were saying the same thing, their ideas sound better than my idea. So we have to learn how to express ourselves, be confident in expressing ourselves, and be creative. Like, for instance, I had a name change from field representative to district representative because I just wasn't feeling the feel, like Phil hand. So I submitted that and I had it change. And then I became the senior district representative. So we need to jump out of our box and be comfortable with what we feel and our creations, and be able to share it without feeling like we're not going to be accepted and we're going to be ignored.
Yeah, well, we certainly got some examples of strong women leadership around here. So looking forward to that presentation. Sarah, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
All right, can you talk a little bit about what you have in mind? I know you haven't put it together yet, but what you got in mind for the lessons in Black women's health?
Well, it's just that we'll focus on physical health, but also mental and emotional health as well. Just well, actually, it kind of does go with what Jamil and Kathy mentioned about Black women's health and how we are more susceptible to losing our life during childbirth and losing a baby during childbirth, and just those things by being ignored and not understood. And so I want to do a focus on that, and also on the importance of mental health and how that's ignored.
Excellent, excellent. All necessary conversations. Looking forward to them all. And then I'm the last one on the schedule, talking about the divine nature of Black women, a celebration of those who create life and make life worth living. That's a presentation I've done several times. I got a few versions of that presentation, and all of the versions combined there, it is one of my, if not my very most favorite presentation to give, because of the significance of it. What I have done in the past when I'm talking about the divine nature
what I've done in the past is, centered the conversation in the sacred text. And I've been able to even it's easy to, go to the African sacred text and get a conversation about the divinity of women. That's in there. We can find that. Going into the Bible is a different story, because of course we understand that it's male-centered, patriarchal, all of that, and there's a diminished status for women there. But if you know where to look, you can find a divine presentation of women even in that text. So in my prior conversations, I've covered that. In this one, I may touch on some of that, but I think I'm going to spend most of my time talking about the fact that nothing inspires people. And when I say people, I'm talking about all people. I believe more than women do. That's not to take anything away from the inspiration that we provide as men, and certainly not to take anything away from the way we are profoundly inspired by our children. But in my observations, I've noticed that, in my own personal experience, I have been in my own personal life more inspired by the Black women in my life than by any others, from my mom to aunties, girlfriends, teachers, absolutely teachers. I've been inspired more by women. And I've observed that, I don't think I would get many arguments from many men about the way we are inspired by women. Men would concede to that. But what I've also observed is that women inspire each other, in very significant ways. Women inspire each other in ways that men don't inspire each other. And, it's a beautiful thing when it's in harmony. So I'm going to talk about the divine nature of women in the most meaningful ways, and encourage. And I should say this because I think I was initially inspired to this conversation because, I got to the point where I decided that, as a man, I need to refer to God as she, because on one hand, that represents a balance. If men were to recognize the divinity in women by referring to God as she, that would be sort of a balance, correcting the balance and also reflecting the ultimate reality of things. Because, everybody who exists, every human being came from a woman. They are creators, right? So what's more divine than that, than the act of creating life? So I'm going to tighten up my presentation, but I most certainly look forward to speaking about the divine nature of our sisters and the inspiration for them. And that subtitle is drawn from a quote from Mary McLeod Bethune that I'm certainly going to invoke, that says, "Next to God, we are indebted to women, first for life itself, and then for making it worth living." And the very first time I heard that quote, I latched on to it as one of my favorite quotes in life because of the truth that it represents. Certainly for me as a man, women make my life worth living. I can't imagine what the world would be like without y'all. I know I wouldn't be here.
Hey, that's what James Brown says.
That's right. That's right. I wouldn't be here. So that's what we got planned. And as we've said here at 705, we're going to do an assessment, after this period, and as we go through it to decide, how we want to go forward, any changes that we want to make going forward, and all of that. So with that, I'm going to consider this the end of our open session. And I'm gonna pause the recording here. Let me see. I'm gonna have to take back hosting in order to be able to do that. And I'm gonna pause that right there, and then look forward to our